Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're all well in the best of health and iman, inshaAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that I have created you, and why do you not believe? And in another ayah he asks you that were you created from nothing, or did you create yourselves? And inshallah, to assess that question today, we've called Brother Abdullah al Andalusi, who is a thinker, speaker and debater on various Islamic topics, and he comes from the organization Muslim Debate Initiative. Inshallah, he will extend certain arguments for the existence of God that we can obviously, when we speak to other people who don't believe in a God, and we can tell them these arguments to prove our point, inshallah. So Brother Abdullah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, as-salatu wa-salam nabi kareem Muhammad wa alihi tayyibin wa sahbihi salihin, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. You know, the existence of God, when a lot of you came to this lecture, and what kind of thoughts were probably going through your head, I suppose a lot of us, when we go to such lectures, we think, it's going to be using a lot of philosophical terms, a lot of technical terms, a lot of jargon that we don't fully understand. It's going to be very complicated, or only deep thinkers or philosophers can come to the conception that God exists. But I'm going to posit, really, it's not actually, it doesn't require philosophers, it doesn't require deep thinkers, it doesn't require philosophy or a technical study of existence, but rather it's very intuitive and commonplace. The only problem is, the only reason why you see more complex arguments for the existence of God is because there are complex counter-arguments launched against people who have a more intuitive concept. So for example, if you just take a baby, and a baby's one of its first questions, well, a young child rather, one of its first questions to its parents would be where babies come from. So where do babies come from? And why does it think that babies come from anywhere? Why not the child think maybe babies are just eternal and they were never created, they've always been there, and maybe they just get delivered to the parents, or maybe at some point in their existence they start to grow. Why doesn't the child think that? Because intuitively we know a baby it's a creature, it's limited, it's finite. What made it? Did it make itself? Then it would need to exist before, in order to make itself. That wouldn't make any sense. So just very intuitively, as a child, even on the child level, people ask the question, and humans naturally want to ask the question as to what caused existence, or what caused everything around us. But the thing is, of course, that because there are people who wish, for some reason or other, which we'll get into, maybe to deny the existence of God, maybe it's just not convenient. Maybe they've had a bad experience with a particular understanding of God narrated in a religion which they've had a bad experience with. Maybe they've, for some reason or the other, they've just been conditioned, or society has told them that believing in God is equal to believing in fairies and unicorns and so on and so forth, and so they've just accepted that as a belief blindly. And because of such motivations, which we'll get into more in depth after our discussion, they decide to find a counter-argument to a very intuitive desire amongst humans to ask the question as what caused everything, and conclude that it was something that has an intelligence of some kind, or a will of some kind. So they produce counter-arguments, and at this point where more advanced arguments for God are required to counter what is in essence word games or sophistry used by those who are anti-theist. So, I suppose a common question which we in the modern, let's say, Western world, which they say there is no answer to, is what is the meaning of life? And they say there is no answer to that question. It can't be answered, which is an assumption. Of course, in the Quran we see this argument rebutted, saying that does mankind, do you think mankind was made aimless, or they were for no reason? And this is the assumption of those who disbelieve. So it's just an assumption that said there is no answer to that question. But I suppose the real question that we should ask is not really what is the purpose of life, but rather, is there even a purpose of life, or a purpose to existence, and does everything exist without a meaning? Now, in order for something to have meaning, it must have an intention behind it, right? if I was to say to you a word, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, you don't know this word, you probably heard it from a certain Mary Poppins film, but if I was to cite such a word, your first recourse would at least be to a dictionary, or in this day and age, Google, and you would try to find out what the word means, as in what was the intended meaning behind that word. So whoever created that word, what was the intended meaning, the intended significance behind that word? If the word hasn't been created, well, it wouldn't exist, of course, and of course it would have no meaning, unless of course it was created to have no meaning, and so on, but that's a different discussion. So the real question is, before we answer the questions, what is the meaning of life, is there a meaning to life? Is there a purpose behind it? And the only way we can ascertain that is if we see that there is an intention behind everything that exists. Everything that exists around you was intended. Now, we have to, before we embark on that journey, we have to look at what is our tools, what is our method of, how would we engage in the study of this, how would we approach this? Now, there are a number of approaches that people use. Some people say that you can know God's existence, or an answer to that question, the meaning of life, through a spiritual experience or a mystical experience. But there's a problem with that, is that it's very subjective, as in different people have different emotions and different experiences which they claim is spiritual. Some people might take particular kinds of mind-altering drugs to get what they call a spiritual experience. The problem is, of course, with that is you can have an experience, but how do you know it's not hallucination, or how do you know it's not something that you dreamt, or something that was induced by drugs, or so on and so forth, and just came from your head? So we don't know that for certain. Secondly, of course, is that if we could only know the answer to that question, so if we could only know that God exists via a mystical spiritual experience, then how comes that is not available to all humans, and why is it not consistent as well? So why is not the experience consistent and reliable, and why is it not available to all humans? So how comes all humans aren't all born with a mystical experience to understand that God exists, an actual experience? They don't. So we know that mystical experience or spiritual experiences are generally speaking not the most reliable method to know that God exists, or know that there is an answer to the question of whether there is meaning. What about the empirical method, or we call the scientific method, as it's called? Can we know the answer to meaning via the scientific method, and can we know that if there is a creator, a world creator, a God, or using the scientific method or not? Well, there's a little problem with the scientific method with regards to this question, and that is science only deals with what is tangible, what is physical, what is detectable through the five senses. And of course, we cannot use it to detect what is beyond the five senses. Even for things, there are things which exist within this universe, should we say, that we can't use science on. You can't use science on poetry. You can't use science on art, music, literature, so reading, language itself. You can't use science on. You can't use science to investigate thinking or the human mind. Difference from a brain, there's brain and there's mind. The brain, yes, you can put it in a petri dish and you can dissect it, but you can't detect the mind, nor could you detect, for example, personality. These things you require a different branch of study. In this particular issue for personality, maybe psychotherapy and psychoanalytical approaches, but not physical science. Of course, science itself requires something else in order for it to make any deductions. You see, science just detects things. It doesn't detect the why, it detects the how something works. So for example, if we were going to look at a clock and we were going to use science would tell you that what the clock was made out of, wood, metal. It would tell you the mass of the clock. It would tell you how many cogs there are in the clock. It would tell you how does the hand look like, and what sounds does the bell ring when it reaches a certain time. It will tell you all those things, but it can't tell you, science can't tell you the clock was made by a clockmaker. You will not see the clockmaker in the clock. You can put the clock under any kind of microscope or telescope or whatever experimentation, and you cannot see the clockmaker. And you might say, but what if the clockmaker wrote made by so-and-so in the clock, like some watches are? But science would only tell you that these indentations are just grooves in the wood. It wouldn't tell you that it's language. It wouldn't tell you that the language is pointing to a maker. So language is not scientific, it's not part of science. So science would just tell you that there are some grooves. If I was to open up any book, science would just tell you the book is made out of paper and it's made out of, and it has ink on it. It doesn't tell you that it is language. It doesn't tell you what language, it doesn't tell you what the meaning of the language is. You rely on another faculty, and that is rationality or rational thinking. When we say rational, we just mean thinking. But we say rational to mean that it's thought which is based upon observation. It's thought which doesn't make any assumptions. Thought which does not believe in contradictions. There should be no contradictions in your thinking. So for something to be rational, it must be no contradiction. So for example, if someone said to you that I'll give you £5, and then they said to you that I've given you £5, and then later on they say but you have no money. But before you've done anything with that £5, you still have it in your hand. That would be wrong. It would be a contradiction. He's giving you £5. He knows you have £5. You're holding it in your hand. You haven't done anything with it. Then he goes, but you have no money. So this is a contradiction in terms. And of course, we know human mind can accept contradiction. And that's actually, I would posit, is the standard for falsehood. How do we know falsehood is something? How do you know something is false? It's because it has contradictions in it. Interestingly, the Quran says that had it been from any other source other than God, you would have found within it many contradictions. So these are rational points. Of course, the Quran is a very interesting book. Whether you believe in its origin or not, wherever its origin might be, you have to conclude that it is a book which encourages rational thinking, because it tells man, do you not observe, do you not think upon what is between the heavens and the earth? So it's telling you to thought based on observation. It condemns the pagan Arabs for so they follow only what their ancestors were telling them, but they had no evidence. This is assumption. That the pagan Arabs were following assumptions. And the Quran obviously says that doubt does not avail against the truth. Dhan. So what is doubtful does not avail against the truth. So you can't make assumptions when you want to find certain knowledge or certainty. And of course, the fourth component of rational thinking is the belief in the causality of finite objects. Right? Of finite objects. Not just in causality. People say everything was created, and then obviously someone says, but who created God? Haha, I found the contradiction. No, rational thinking posits that all things which are finite are caused. Now, I could say, for example, how do I know that this bottle was created? How do I know? Does anyone know, or have a way to determine whether this bottle was created? Does everyone in this room think that this bottle was created? Yes or no? Yeah? Okay. Could someone tell me why they think this bottle was created? Sister?
It has a design and a purpose to it.
It has a design and a purpose?
Yeah.
How do you know it has a purpose?
Because we use it to drink water.
Just because we use it doesn't mean it necessarily might be created. It might be eternal, but just happens that we find it useful. Do you think? No. Was there a gentleman in front that wasn't mid? No? Okay. She took the bullet first, and then you're like, okay, I was going to say the same thing. No. All right. Does anyone else have any idea of how they know or why they believe this is created? This bottle was created. You, brother?
Because it's lifeless.
Because it's lifeless?
Yes.
So if something was alive, it wouldn't be created? No. You, brother?
It's got the company's name on it.
It's got the company's name on it?
Yeah.
Maybe this is just a very interesting coincidence. All right, that this eternal object just happens to have this particular design. Maybe the company Vittel discovered this bottle and built its company based on the discovery of this bottle, this eternal bottle. How do you know that this bottle is created? Usually, in this example, I usually bring a stone because people might say, "Oh well, I've seen other bottles." The most common argument is, "I've seen other bottles being made, and maybe bowls like this, and that's how I know this bottle was created." But the problem is, of course, they haven't seen this particular bottle being made. Again, I could argue that bottle manufacture came because humans discovered this eternal bottle of water, and they built their entire bottle making industry on the discovery of an eternal bottle. So how do you know that this specific bottle is created? Any other takers? No, okay. I hope I haven't got you to believe in this bottle is eternal. Like, don't start worshipping it, please. How we know that this bottle is not eternal is very simple. And it was alluded to with the brother who opened up the discussion about the verse of the Quran and said, did they make themselves, are they themselves the creators? Very simple. Did this bottle create itself? Well, obviously, you have to exist already before to create yourself, so that can't be discounted. Okay, so then how do you know this bottle maybe wasn't eternal? It has always been the way it is, but there's a certain problem that arises when you believe that, which is, why is it this bottle is a particular shape, mass, color, whatever you might call it, why is it not twice as big? As for all eternity, why does it have this particular size and not twice the size or half the size? Why is it this particular limited size? Then here's the problem: limited, right? It has a certain finite shape. It only exists within certain parameters. The question is, where did this limitation come from? If you're saying that the bottle was never created, it was eternal, then that means that nothing gave it its limits. So then the fact that it has limits would show that it's not eternal or created. And this is just human rationality. I don't need to see it being made to know it was created. Likewise, if I see a stone, or I see a rock, or I go to a mountain and I find a cave and I find some whatever stone tablet in it, I would always conclude, or even just a natural rock formation, I'd conclude it was always created. And science goes on that assumption. Well, it's not really assumption, it's actually a rational deduction. Science requires rational thinking as its underlay. So science goes, this is an interesting object, let's study how it was created. So I could see a rock, and using rationality, I wouldn't be able to determine how it was created. But I could deduce it was created. And of course, then I'd go to science, which would show me maybe how, using various methods of investigating geological study and archaeology and so on and so forth. So rationality is the underpinning, right? If you do an experiment and it produces a particular result, and then I change one variable in that experiment and it produces a different result, I could conclude that at least most likely me changing the variable has led to a different result. That's not science, that's rational thinking. And it doesn't mean that it's always absolutely necessary, because maybe there's a big coincidence. Maybe as I was changing one variable, something else changed that I didn't see, and it created the different result. That's why we say it's most likely, because you can't see every factor within our limited human observation. But science depends on rationality. And if you throw out rationality, then science falls down, because then you wouldn't be able to make any conclusions. And remember, human observation is limited to literally what you can see with your 5 senses, and even then sometimes it's not reliable. But scientific experimentation tries to detect things which are outside your sphere of observation. So distant planets or atoms, you can't see it with the naked eye. But bacteria or so, you can't see it with the naked eye. You need to use other kinds of equipment which will augment your abilities, or give you, for example, people, under electron microscope they could see field of atoms. Now those things weren't literally what atoms look like. There was just a representation, because you couldn't see it. They're smaller than the wavelength of light. You wouldn't be able to see the atom, but you see it by its effects. Right, that's why, Pluto, they didn't detect Pluto until they saw, or many of the planets, or even planets in other star systems, they couldn't see it directly before they determined they existed, because they saw gravity, the effect of the planet on other planets, causing gravitational pull. So a lot of what you think you see is actually the effect of something. And you think, oh, this is a finite effect. What caused it? You see, rationality, that's what rational thinking is. Cause and effect of finite and limited objects. But of course, these are the methods of thinking, and so the rational method of thinking is a method which we should employ to come to certainty upon the existence of God, or meaning if they exist. Now let's go into what we can observe. Well, people say that, in this day and age, we observe further into the universe than our ancestors, so we should come to more certainty now as to what created the universe. I don't think that's not necessary. That is not actually necessary. You see, all you need to conclude is that from everything you can see, including yourself, that you are all, and everything that you can witness is finite and limited. It doesn't matter how big the universe is, and maybe there's more universes than we can see, we don't know. But all we need to do is that everything we can see around us is finite and limited, and therefore needs a cause. People might say, but what if you were in the Matrix and this was a mythical reality around you and you're being fooled, right? How can you come to a conclusion that everything was created? Or I say, because even the Matrix is limited, right? Even if I was in the Matrix, all those little programs and all that stuff that I'm seeing around me it does come from a reality. There is something causing that. Programs on a big hard drive or something somewhere in the Matrix, but certainly it would come from somewhere. Even the hallucinations or delusions which you see in front of you come from somewhere. It comes from your subconscious. So it's caused by something, right? Everything you see is caused by something. There is some reality to it. Whether the only question is what is we can say exists as tangible, what exists as not tangible. This is where people differ, of course. But what you can conclude is whatever is what reality really is like, we know for absolute certain it's finite and it's limited. That we know for absolute certain. The rest we'll leave for science, we'll leave for Morpheus and the Matrix, whatever, and the red and blue pill. That we can do, but whatever we can see is limited and finite. So now there is one simple question that remains. What caused everything we can see? What caused the reality that we observe? Now there are only two possible answers. One answer is another reality which is maybe greater but finite still, or another reality which is not finite. So let's humor the first option. That whatever is in this bubble we can observe, this was caused by a greater reality which is also finite. And then of course, the question is, then what caused that reality? And of course you'd say, maybe there's another bigger reality, an even massive one which created or caused a chain of events that came to this reality. Okay. Now the thing is this, some people say, well, maybe there's an infinite number or chain of these or bigger realities which create this, eventually it caused this reality. But there's a problem with that line of thinking. It's that if we depended on an infinite chain of realities to create us, or universes, or whatever name you want to call it, if we depended on an infinite number to get to this point, would we ever reach this point? If I said to you that you can only leave this lecture after an infinite amount of time has passed, no matter how riveting this lecture is, of course, you might find it, but as an infinite time has passed, would you ever leave this lecture? No. So there has to be a point where it ends before you can then leave the lecture. So if we're saying that an infinite number of realities must exist before this reality exists, would we ever get to this reality? No. And this is what we call the infinite regress fallacy, if you want to be technical about the terms, of course. So there has to be a beginning point. Some people say, I'll give another analogy that I like just to kind of hammer this home. So imagine if there's a vending machine, it probably is a vending machine, that sells sandwiches or chocolate bars or whatever, right? So let's say a sandwich. And this vending machine required £1 to get that sandwich. But let's say that you are poor, you don't have £1 to get the sandwich. So you ask someone else, say, could you give me that £1 and for me to get a sandwich? And he says, I would like to, but I too am poor, and I must ask someone else. So he asks someone else, and he asks someone else, and asks someone else, and someone else. If you had an infinite number of that going on, an infinite number of people asking, would the first person ever get the £1 to buy the sandwich? No. There has to be one person who says, yes, I have the pound, I will start off the chain of lending the pound to one to the other until you get to the first person who can then finally get the sandwich. So there has to be a start point, a beginning point. And of course, the first possibility whereby there's an infinite chain of finite things causing everything to exist can't be true. It's quite simply. Reality wouldn't exist. So then what's the other alternative is that whatever started the chain of events that led to our existence must be not finite. Because if something doesn't have limits, then it doesn't depend on anything else to give it those limits, or to define it. Just as bottle depends on something else to define it. And of course, we have a start point because it has limitations which require defining. There has to be a start point, and this start point, in order for it to not require to be created itself, it must have no intrinsic limitations. It must be unlimited, infinite. Now, of course, as finite creatures, it's very hard to comprehend that. That's why the English word for infinite is from the Latin infinis, which means not finite. The only thing we can define this creator, or whatever you want to call it, is by what it's not. It's not us, basically. Or even in Arabic, you have the word mahdud, which means, from hudud, limits, mahdud, finite. So the Arabic word for infinite is ghair mahdud, which means not finite. That's the only way in any language you can truly define something which is not finite by what it's not. Of course, the atheist many atheists have concluded exactly the same. They come to the same point, the same conclusion. They say, yes, well, okay, fine, I'll accept that the first cause is infinite. But how do you know that it has a will? How do you know it has free will or an intelligence? Maybe it was just some mechanical process, like a multiverse. Well, technically the multiverse can mean multiple universes, but it can also mean, in one way, this infinite reality which creates universes and creates it mindlessly. And in order to answer the question as why is it that we live in a universe where all these limits are so tweaked so that life could come about and we could understand it, they say, oh, that's only because this multiverse creates an infinite number of universes of every particular variation and type. And so we just happen to be in the type that life came about and could realize that there was a multiverse and realize its own consciousness and so on and so forth. That's what they'll say. That's their argument. But there is one little problem. Well, it's not really little, it's a big problem with that argument, which is, why does the multiverse make universes? Why? For what, why? And you might think, what do you mean by why? Well, what caused it to make universes? Is that there's only two possibilities, if it's mechanical, right? So either it has a smaller mechanism inside it that compels it to make universes. Like a watch, a watch, it tells the time, but there's a smaller mechanism inside that makes it tell the time. Or there is an external force, there's an external force to the multiverse that makes it or compels it to make universes, right? It doesn't matter if it's an infinite number of universes or not, but why does it make universes in the first place? Of course, let's go with, option B. If something else is making the multiverse make universes, then the multiverse isn't the first cause. Something else would be then the first cause. And the question is, what made that? And then what made that? And what made that? And of course, you'd have the same problem as infinite regress fallacy. That can't be the case. Maybe there's an internal mechanism inside the clock, or inside the multiverse, sorry, like the clock, which compels it to make universes. Maybe that's the answer. Well, of course, then the question would be, what makes that mechanism make the multiverse make universes? It's like opening up a clock and seeing a smaller clock inside. So, okay, opening that clock and there's no smaller clock, and ad infinitum, if you say there's an infinite number of smaller and smaller clocks, it's the same problem then. Where does the first clock or whatever, or small clock begin? Otherwise, if there's an infinite number of them that you have to depend on, nothing would come about. It's like a babushka doll, but with a smaller babushkas, but in this case it's a clock. And the thing is, there has to be a first smaller clock that would begin winding the whatever the gears to actually begin the process of the ultimate clock telling the time. So again, it's infinite regress fallacy. It doesn't work. So multiverse doesn't answer the question as to what makes this multiverse make universe, or why does it make universes. There is only one other possibility which is rational, which is whatever this infinite thing, whatever it has created, it does so without any compulsion. So nothing forces it, there's no internal mechanism that forces it, and there's no external mechanism that forces it to make universes. What do you call something that does things without being compelled to, externally or internally? It's called a will. It's called, we can say intelligence, but intelligence is too wrapped up with the human understanding of what intelligence is. So let's just say will, or free will. So quite ultimately, this infinite thing makes universes because it wants to or it chooses to. That is the definition of choice, or definition of will, it initiates without anything making it do so. So it is the first initiator as well as the first creator, or which might be even the same thing if you think about it. And this is the definition of what is God. What is a God? God is something which is infinite, no limits, and has a will. That is the bare bones, fundamental definition of God. And it's why we didn't just discover this now, or just because Abdullah discovered it in 2009 or whatever. No, for centuries, all civilizations have understood or believed in a higher deity which began the process of creation. It's not something which we came to. And the problem which atheists can't answer is that the multiverse, why does it make universes? And then they say, oh, that's just a mystery. Oh, interesting, now you say it's a mystery. Well, that sounds like a religious zealot that doesn't understand why they believe. They just want to believe in something, and they say it doesn't make sense, so they just say it's a mystery. And they accuse theists of blind faith or dogma or fanaticism. The answer, of course, is also interesting on the point when they say, I don't believe in God like I don't believe in fairies and unicorns. Some people say that. You've probably heard that. I don't know if anyone has heard this argument, right? And if they believe in the multiverse, you say, well, actually, you do believe in fairies and unicorns. They actually do. Some people have got it now. They've clicked on, why do I say that? That's because they believe that there's an infinite number of universes that have been created, right? In order to justify this universe being created. And of course, in all these different universes, there must be, infinite variety of things. And I'll guarantee then, in an infinite number of universes with infinite possibilities, one of these universes has a unicorn and a fairy and a Pegasus and what have you, and Gollum from Lord of the Rings and whatever, right? It's all there. If it's infinite possibilities, it has to. We see a rhino, we see a horse. Maybe in some other reality, there's a horse that actually has a horn on its head, a unicorn. So I say, actually, if you want to go to a multiverse theory, it's you are the one who believe in fairies, unicorns, goblins, and what have you, not us, actually. So that's actually quite the irony of the matter. So really, the argument is as simple as that for establishing God's existence. It's nothing more complex, and most of this is really intuitive for people for kids. And growing up, but the only reason why we had to go through all this is because people make complex counter-arguments. But I won't just end it there. I'll maybe answer a few points. Why do people reject the existence of God? In the modern age, it's quite simple. After the European Enlightenment, they invented the idea of the individualism or liberalism. The individual should be not limited by anything. Nothing should dictate to the individual their life. And of course, according to individualism, what is the biggest dictator? It is God. It is religion, right? It limits the freedom which individuals acting on their own autonomy have. The God owns the individual, whereas individualism says that you own yourselves. You see, it's a clash. And of course, there are various problems. So of course, they don't like, individualists will gradually, over time, they will clash with the idea of God and the individuals being limited in their freedom. And hence, they don't like that and they reject it. The second reason why people reject God's existence is because of a particular lie that was invented by liberalism itself. See, liberalism told people, and the inventors of liberalism were theists at the beginning, that the purpose of life is to seek happiness and enjoyment. Right? Seek happiness and enjoyment. But there's a little problem with that: suffering. So what they do is they say, well, the purpose of life is to seek happiness and enjoyment. God made us, and yet there is suffering, ergo, God is unjust to our purpose. Of course, our question is, who told you your purpose was to enjoy yourself? I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy yourself, but who told you that pain or suffering isn't part and parcel of a natural life as much as pleasure is? Who told you this? It's a lie. It's an assumption. And then they say, oh, why is God so evil? I said, no, God doesn't owe you anything. He's not your cosmic wish genie that does things for you. It's the other way around. You're not here just to gratuitously enjoy yourself. That's part of your life, and you shouldn't neglect it. You shouldn't be miserable. But that's not the only aspect of your life, right? Pain and misery, unfortunately, affects us, and is part of our experience. It's part of our purpose in life is to experience both these things. Of course, we should minimize one, go for the other, but you can't eliminate it. And that's just part of our life. So that's an assumption. That they made the assumption and they judged God by the assumption they made, and they concluded he was unjust, which is silly. The other reason why people have rejected God is because of the human corruption of the concept of God. You see, the thing with humans is that some humans are so arrogant, or maybe they're so weak, that it's very difficult for them to worship or appreciate a God which they can't see and is eternal, timeless, and not like us. So instead of getting close to God metaphorically, they bring God close to them literally, and they make a God in their own image, a God with a human face, a God with maybe an animal face or a particular creature of some kind, and they say, oh yes, this is a manifestation of God, or these are intercessors to God. But what you'll find in all these problems, and of course rightly so, when an atheist looks at this, or a person who wasn't initially an atheist looks at this, and they think, this is just silly. You're worshipping stone statues, you're worshipping human vanity, you're worshipping a man who died. I mean, why you believe in an ever-living God, and you say this man is God, yet he died. So God, the ever-living God died, doesn't make sense. Or the Trinity idea, the idea that God has 3 different persons within him, each have their own will, yet God is only one will at the same time. Contradiction. And so people rejected the belief in God because they encountered bogus theories about the nature of God. But that doesn't invalidate God's existence. It should just only invalidate those theories in the first place. You see, we threw the baby out the bathwater in those things. We'd say the ultimate or the first and most significant sin really is mixing the infinite with the finite in any way, shape or form. And that's how all these other belief systems came up, was when you mixed the infinite with the finite. And that's where the problem comes. People say, for example, well, if I pray to a saint, I'm referring to Roman Catholicism here, no offense to Roman Catholics, but I'm just giving an example. So when I pray to a saint, it is for the saint to give me intercession with God. But the question is, what is God? Does he not have enough time to hear you? Is his attention span or his attention so limited that he can't see and hear every single atom or subatomic particle in his universe simultaneously? What, that he's limited? He needs to have a go-between because he can't do everything? No. This is limiting God. Surely God can be able to hear you. As the Quran says, he's closer to you than your jugular vein. Metaphorically, not actually, he literally is inside you, to be taken literally, because obviously we are finite creatures. So the problem is that humans have always mixed finite and infinite together in different forms and shapes and so on. And this is the cause of why people reject belief in God, because they've seen bogus theories. Of course, people say that, how can I believe in God when there are different religions about him? You know, I mean, like, surely if it was so self-evident, if it was so obvious, then why are there different religions about him? And I say, well, look, there are different theories about gravity. Does it mean gravity doesn't exist? In fact, there's different theories about many things. You study it in your university. Many different theories. It doesn't mean that what they're describing doesn't exist. It just means that you are necessarily maybe ignorant about the true nature of something that exists. But that exists is not in question. Gravity exists. Is it due to a graviton particle? Is it due to an indentation in space and time fabric? We don't know for certain. But we know, we can see its effects, we know it exists, and that's exactly the same. Just because there are different religions about God doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. It means that there are different theories. But I would posit that very simple criteria is just not mixing the finite and infinite, and you'll find that a lot of religions actually agree with regards to God's nature. Judaism and its understanding of God, Unitarian Christianity, not Trinitarian Christianity, although they are a minority, and of course Islam, and some other faiths around the world believe in a God that doesn't have a human form, shape, or any nature which is human. and that he's transcendent, as in he's not within this finite, limited universe and doesn't manifest himself as a rock or a human being, and he's not finite in any way. There are many religions out there that believe in this because this is rationally deducible, and arguably, I would argue that revelation comes from a common source. The only problem with it is humans corrupt or change things. Even in this day and age, even with Christianity, with Islam, even concerning the laws, there are people trying to change the Islamic laws and beliefs, for example, to make it fit with a more dominant civilization. Christianity, it was the same with the Romans, the Roman Empire. The early Christians were pretty much almost Jewish or fully Jewish, and they saw the Roman civilization. They converted people from Roman Empire, and Christianity was adapted to make it appealing to the Romans, and by basically being very Roman in itself. And that's why you have Christianity, and why they don't have the same law system as the Jews, even though Jesus never ate pork, he prayed with bowing and prostration. But all that was changed into a more Roman religion. No offense to any Christians here. I'm just asserting this, that it's not a lecture about the origins of Christianity, so please forgive me. I'll just take it as an assertion, an unproven assertion, and maybe in another time we can go through that in depth. And lastly, I suppose, there are some people who are overly dependent on the empirical worldview. They're overly dependent. They love science so much that they apply it on everything. But the problem is that science, as I told you, it can't be applied on everything. If you actually want to be purely scientific, then deny language, deny poetry, deny art, deny even thinking, or the presence of mind, and deny even free will. So if someone commits an act of murder, theft, or rape, or whatever, then on the court say, well, I don't have a soul, I don't have free will, so I'm just a mindless automaton. It was just my genes and my circumstances that made me do it. Right, so you couldn't actually blame the individual for their choices, because if there's no soul, there is no choice, and there is no free will. There's only mechanical operation. So the problem is some people want to apply science, and science is a limited area of study. So I think I've kind of discussed the main reasons why people had called in question the belief in God, what they have seen. Some were based on the irrationalities of people who claimed to believe in theism, and others were because, quite simply, they believed in a doctrine that affirmed infinite freedom for humans. And even though we live in a universe that doesn't give you infinite freedom, and certainly we were created not to be infinitely free, we're not infinite, full stop. So I think these are the reasons, and I think it's a very simple subject, and inshallah, on that point, I think we will open up for questions, inshallah.
If you guys want to ask any questions, we'll make sure you keep it related to the topic. So, any questions? Sangin? Hey? No questions? Sisters?
Because we thought since you're sitting by yourself in the corner there, you want to be noticed to ask the first question, so we gravitate towards you.
You say not everyone has a concept of God and etc. What about Hinduism?
What about Hinduism? Hindus actually believe in Brahman, which is this transcendent, unlimited being. But what they say is, oh, Brahman, he's so distant and he's so transcendent that he needs to create intermediaries for us to interact with, and hence all these, they'll actually admit that all these gods like Vishnu and Ganesh and others, they are all created gods to interact with and are manifestations of Brahman. There's one problem with that, of course, is first and foremost is if you create these other gods, they're not actually gods, then they're just creatures, created by God, by this Brahman. Secondly, all these different manifestations of Brahman seem to have this big drama with each other and argue and fight and so on. I mean, is God schizophrenic? Does he have multiple wills that all jostle with each other? It doesn't make sense. Right? Why are they all talking to each other? They're all meant to be like puppets, which are made by Brahman as an interface. So originally, I would posit that Hinduism began as a monotheistic faith thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, and over time it got corrupted. Now, the process I would posit to my thesis on this is that, and it's just a theory because I don't know the origin of Hinduism. Who knows? You have to be there to witness it. All historians only speculate as to it, so it's only a theory. But what I'll say is that look at Roman Catholicism. It started out as just a belief in God, and then put the Trinity aside for 1 second. They started to include all these saints. Each saint has a particular topic that he specializes in, like the patron saint of travelers or the patron saint of merchants or what have you. So if you're a Christian, you have to, in order to intercede with these saints who've been given the spark of the divine, whatever that means, you pray to the particular saint who will liaise with God on your behalf and on their particular subject matter, and they will give you what you want on that particular subject. And lo and behold, in every polytheistic faith, there is almost always a head God, and then the little sub-gods, brothers, sisters, sons, and auntie G's, all there, and they each one have a specialism which you pray to deal with certain matters. The pagan Arabs, ancient Greeks, the Romans, Aztecs, ancient Egyptians, you name it. Always little sub-gods. So I'm positive that, and we know that the pagan Arabs started out as a monotheistic faith, and they became corrupted over time. Likewise with the Roman Catholics. I would posit that with Hindus, or Hinduism, or really it was actually called Dharma, that's his original name. Hinduism is the colonial name for it. It started out as a monotheistic faith, and people added all these intercessors later. So you have.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
You said about, people, empires try to change religion in order for them to, accommodate their own, desires or whatnot, their own civilizations. So Islam today, as you see nowadays, is like under, trying to be influenced through different means in order to be changed. Everything. Like, what do you define as change? Because obviously, as science is going, science is developing, and at the time of in Andalus, you might have heard about that before. When Europe was under Christendom, a lot of the Bible is contradict the science theories, and a lot of the priests, they started calling them blasphemous, and they started getting persecuted within Europe. Within Islam, some places, some Muslim countries, unfortunately, some scholars, they have the same kind of mentality, or what would you comment upon that? How should Islam in the 21st century,
That's not to the topic, bro.
I know, but it's an interesting question. I'll deal with it very, very quickly. There's only one thing that changes, and that's technology and human understanding of the universe changes. Humans don't change. So the law system for humans should never change. So like democracy, they say democracy is modern, Islam is ancient, right? But democracy is 1,000 years older than Islam. Islam is more modern than democracy. Yet, they resurrect this old ancient system and they say, wipe off the dust, ready to use, out the packet. You see? So systems never change because systems just deal with relationships between humans. Technology changes, yes. And of course Islam has adapted to technology. In fact, it's created a lot of the technology, which were the precursors of modern day technology, including I think it was the drive shaft, which permitted cars to be built now. So Islam doesn't have a problem with technology because technology is to do with the physical things in this universe, which Islam doesn't have an issue with. What the Christians had a problem with, and it wasn't because they were Christian, it was because they were in the Dark Ages. The Roman Empire, prior to its fall, was Christian. And I believe it had some really great philosophers who were Christian, and then it collapsed due to barbarians, due to the very sociological explanation. It collapsed, not due to because it embraced Christianity. In fact, it embraced Christianity to try to hold the empire together. All right, so Christianity wasn't actually I don't have a camel burning for Christianity because I'm not Christian. But we have to be honest with this. Christians weren't backward because they were Christians. It was because the fall of the Roman Empire and barbarian tribes destroying all the technology left behind. It was pretty much like a third world country is now, with just warlords running around and saying they own the place. That was the reason. Now, the problem with the Bible initially, to some extent, you are right, because the way the Bible was written, it's not the word of God as we understand it. It was really, you could say the Bible was written as Christian historians were writing the Sirah. The Arabic word would be Sirah for our version of a historian writing the life of a prophet, what a prophet would be doing and how he spoke and what have you and so on, his life story. That's what the Bible is. And included in the Bible is lots of theories of that time as to how the universe worked. And that's where there were some problems. Christians take it metaphorically now, it's not really an issue. But with Islam, we don't face the same problems that the Bible faces. So we never believe that the Quran doesn't say that the world is flat. The Quran doesn't talk about how animal life or life came about on this planet. It just says that everything that happens in this universe is God's will. That's what it says. And it even tells us to look at the universe, which it says the ayat of Allah. Is the word ayat is the same word, means proof or evidence, and it also means a verse. So I would say that the Quran points Muslims to two books. There's the Quran and the second ayat of Allah, which is al-waqiyah, the universe, the reality, al-alamin, the universe. So we don't have a problem with any of those things. The only problem is people trying to change the laws of Islam because it's not convenient to whatever society has de-evolved into, or whatever particular society have devolved into, and mainly because there's one particular civilization that conquered militarily other civilizations, and people naturally follow their conquerors. Why do you think Latin is so intermixed with the Anglo-Saxon language? It's because the Anglo-Saxons the Romans, they're so powerful and nice, and they imitate, right? The German, the Franks. They imitated the Roman Empire, they imitated the Roman architecture, and so on, and it became suffused in their culture because they always understood the Romans would be a superior civilization. They didn't have to imitate Latin or put Latin into their language, but they did because they were impressed and wowed by it. So likewise, in this day and age, you have people who are impressed and wowed by whatever is the current dominant civilization. They want to imitate what it says is good and bad, its culture, its taboos. But that's not going to last for long. I mean, China's a rising state, and they've showed the whole world that you can have a successful country without democracy. True, and they don't have the ideas of free speech as the West has, but they would admit that the West also doesn't believe in free speech. There's no such thing as free speech. There's a great philosopher called Eric X. Lee. He came to Oxford Union, and he also came to TEDx. Google him, Eric, initial X, Lee, and he refuted democracy and showed how it's actually it suffers from many of the problems it accuses other people or other nations of having, and also that free speech doesn't exist because everyone has taboos, and as we see with the recent France, where you had people who made comments about the Charlie Hebdo attacks, them being censored, even though there was one image whereby a person drew this picture where he said that a Charlie Hebdo writer with a Charlie Hebdo magazine and bullets going through it, and saying, oh, Charlie Hebdo magazine is rubbish because it doesn't stop bullets, and he got arrested for that. So you're glorifying terrorism. Yet it was actually meant to be a parody of Charlie Hebdo when they were doing when they displayed the protesters in Rabia in Egypt with a Quran and having bullets going through the Quran, killing them, and saying the Quran, Abdullah, they say, is rubbish because it doesn't stop bullets. And that was a Charlie Hebdo cover, no problem. But so what this guy did is he just said, okay, I'm going to replace the Quran with a Charlie Hebdo magazine and replace the Muslim guy being shot with a Charlie Hebdo writer or cartoonist, and make that as a joke front cover. And he got arrested in France. So much for free speech, so much for everyone's equal beneath the law. Doesn't actually exist. So that'll be my answer to your question. A bit long-winded though, but I mean, in essence, Islam doesn't need to change. So right up there, your question, please.
My question is based on a conversation I had with one of my peers. How would you confront the assumption that since there is evil in us and God created us, then God must have created evil, hence there be evil in Him, in the Creator?
Okay, so just to repeat for the brothers who didn't hear that. So the question, if I understand it, is there's evil in us and God created us, and so is there evil in God because He created us to be evil? Well, first and foremost, the definition of evil and what is evil and good is basically what agrees with what the Creator has ordered, or what is our purpose, right? So what fits our purpose? Is an action that we do, is it something that is part of our purpose to do it, or is it against our purpose to do it, right? Likewise, if I had a car, the purpose of a car is transport. If the car doesn't have an engine and all its wheels are taken off, is it a good car? No. So likewise, the same, do we fit our purpose, which we were created for, is the first definition of good and bad. But the thing is this, just because we commit sins or we go against the will of the Creator, doesn't mean that the Creator inside Him is against His own will. Because in essence, good and bad is defined by obedience to the Creator or not. Right, so by definition, there's no such separate entity as the evil force or the dark side, and there's another separate woolly spiritual force called the good side, and God has a bit of bad side in him and a bit of good side. No, the definition of good and bad is agreeing with the will of the Creator, or being consistent with the will of the Creator, or being against the will of the Creator. And God cannot, by definition, be against his own will, and so he can't be bad. But the only question is whether God is consistent or not. So if God ordered us, all of us, to bury our daughters alive, and even our sons alive, but yet he created us to have children, and to love our children, and to want to take care of our children, this would be a contradiction. And then that would be a problem. Why would God tell us an order that is a contradictory to what is an innate or fundamental human nature? That is the real question, whether it's consistency. That's the actual question. And I would say that the laws that God reveals to us is consistent with our nature. But what is our purpose? Our purpose is to make a free choice as to agree with those laws or disagree with those laws. That's part of that's what we have. Why do we have free will? And if we never deviated from doing good, then we don't have free will. The free will requires us to make sins in a way. But it's not a justification to do any sin, by the way. It just means that God expects us to do sin and has created another avenue for us to relate to him, which is seeking to change ourselves and to ask his forgiveness. And as there's a hadith Quds, I'm quoting the text from the Islamic religion for those who don't know. God says if mankind never sinned, he would replace us with a people who could sin and would ask forgiveness, and he would forgive them. So sinning and repenting is part of our purpose. And why is that? Because if you were born perfect, then there would be no free will, and there'd be no need to change. And everything in this universe, even inanimate matter, changes. Change is part of our purpose in this life. And if we don't have an ideal we're aiming to, and an imperfection that we start out with, there can be no change. We start out in... Sorry?
Allah to know which one amongst us are the best is first to strive against our evil will. That's the way I approached it, the question as well. So.
Yeah, it's a very intuitive answer that we all come up with. Is basically the whole point of this life is for us to make the choice to accept God in front of, and there has to be, for that to be there has to be challenging circumstances. There has to be options. Right, other options which are against his will or go against the will that or the law that he has ordained for us. But the only argument that we would accept, if it could be shown, is that a law that God has given is contrary to our nature. Right, and there is no law that God has given us which is contrary to our nature, where he says that, like, commit suicide or kill your family and so on and so forth, or go forth and rape. We don't see that. That's really contrary to our nature. That's against our nature to do that. So God wouldn't create us with a nature, a fitra in Arabic, and then give us a law that goes against our fitra. But there must exist corruptions of human personality or character in order for us to have the choice to either follow God or follow these corruptions. And there are many corrupting influences. You could say Iblis, or we could say Satan is a corrupting influence which is there to give us, to actually facilitate human choice. Or that assumptions, ignorance, prejudice are all there to give us, to facilitate us to actually have free will, to actually have choice. So you can't have choice without falsehood. You can't have it. And that's the purpose and why falsehood exists. Suffering exists to give you the choice to succumb to the suffering and do bad things which you think are necessary to avoid the suffering, or to follow a higher path which might not be initially convenient but is the right thing to do. And that's why evil, or what you call disobedience to God, has to exist. It facilitates us to have free will. It's part of our purpose to experience suffering and pleasure at the same time. Any other questions? You, brother?
Bro. The talk on the existence of God and the arguments that you put across quite clear. So, if we look at the situation now in the world, we see that, there's a lot of propaganda against Islam and it's being attacked left, right and centre. So, why do you think it is that, the people who are attacking Islam don't go from this angle to discuss this intellectually like you have, and rather want to attack the political aspects of Islam and bomb and use violence, whilst they could actually just have the discussion that you have to prove which way is correct. Why do you think that is?
To the topic as well.
Well,
to the topic as well.
Okay, just briefly, technically this lecture is about just proving God's existence, and you don't have to be a Muslim to concur with the conclusions of this lecture. And obviously, is Islam a revelation from God is a different lecture topic, which I'm sure there's, in your Islam Awareness Month, you probably have a few people discussing that and so on. So, inshallah, I would say go to them to have that demonstrated. But just very briefly, the problem with human beings is some people just don't like the truth. You can't handle the truth. They hate the truth. And you think to yourself, why would you hate the truth? Why would you dislike the truth? I just give an example, very briefly, right? So imagine there is a woman or a man, and they have their spouse for many years. They have good kids. They have a nice house, and they're very trusting and loving, and they really trust that person, rely on that person. And then they discover lipstick on their spouse's collar, or whatever is the male equivalent of lipstick. There isn't. But anyway, let's say they did, or they say text message or whatever. They see something which gives them evidence to show that their spouse, the one that they've trusted and loved and had kids with for so many, and suffered for and sacrificed for so many years, could be having an affair on them. What is or if a friend of theirs who's never lied to them comes up to them and say, bro or sister, I've seen your spouse with another guy or girl. What's the first reaction? No, it can't be them. No, it can't be. It's so hurtful. It's so painful that your first reaction is denial. Now that's a natural human response. That's fine. You can have that. It's there to protect. It's to cushion your emotions and cushion your mind, and to allow you to gradually accept the truth. That's the whole point. It just gives this little cushion. But there are some people who just continue denying because they never want to accept the truth, and they know that if they just deny it, then at least in their lifetime, they won't suffer the consequences of denying it. You see? So, out of sight, out of mind. If I say it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. Right? And they choose that because it's more convenient, because maybe their parents taught them something else, because their society taught them something else, because Hollywood taught them something else. It's so inconvenient to believe in theism or to believe in a particular religion, which has been, especially one that's been demonized, that they'll never accept it. So when they encounter it, people who are calling to it and keep trying to remind them, like an annoying alarm clock that just won't stop, they will try to smash it. You understand? So their denial is also a cause of injustice, because they will now attack and kill people around the world because they view it as a threat. They view it as a threat to their nice cushy lifestyle, enjoying their denial. So that's actually the problem of humans. It's a human problem, and in Arabic we call it kufr, to reject something which you know is true. So I'll open up to other.
Yeah, there's a bro ahead, and we take questions from sisters after that. Michelle.
Through the logic of these arguments, we've pretty much proved there's a God. How have we proved there's not more than one?
That's a good question. How do we know there's not more than one God? Very simple. Remember when I said that God is infinite and unlimited? If there were two gods who were unlimited and infinite, wouldn't they limit each other? Which God could destroy the other? Which God could do something that can't be stopped by another God? Of course, the second question is, why two? Why not 3 or 4 or 5? I mean, plurality indicates origin. So if there's more than one thing, it means that it's a finite number and it was caused by something else. You see?
It becomes finite, it's not,
Yeah, you see? And so if there were two infinite creatures or beings, whatever you want to call it, they would limit each other, and then they wouldn't be infinite and unlimited. Refute each other out of existence, so to speak, or deny each other out of existence. And as I said, as a plurality indicates their causality. So, but someone might say disingenuously, oh, but 1 is a finite number. I say, no, 1 just means existence. More than 1 is a number. You see, the use of the word number in English is more than 1. You don't say, if there's one person coming, there's a number of people coming. No, there's not a number of people coming. So number really actually meant more than 1. But I suppose if you're in mathematics, as a technical term, it just refers to any integer used. But 1 just means existence. So we say God is one, and we call it Tawheed, or monotheism. Tawheed from the word Wahid, which means one. And also we say indivisible as well. There's not many parts. Otherwise, if God was in different parts, each part would be infinite and would be equal to many gods as well. You see, so if God has 3 parts, he'd have 3 gods. I'd be like just saying 3 gods at the same time. So that's why there's not more than one God, because God has to be infinite and unlimited.
Any question from the sisters?
I think the sister had a question, was it? No?
Is there a sister? No? No? Any brothers? Any more questions?
I've just got a comment and a question. First of all, when you was mentioning infinite regress,
yes.
It reminded me of an example where I've heard before, where, say for example, you have somebody on a battlefield and he's ready to shoot and he's waiting for the order from his, whoever it's sergeant or whoever, to give him the order to shoot, and he turns to him and says, "Can I shoot?" And that person says, "Okay, 1 second, let me wait," and ask the person behind me. And if that was to go on for infinite, the person at the front would never get the order to shoot. So I just wanted to mention that. But the question I have is, I was speaking to he's no longer Muslim, he's actually agnostic, and he was giving us a scientific argument. We was discussing limited and finite and those type of things, and he was saying that there is something called antimatter, and I don't have a scientific background, so it really went over my head, but I just wanted to see if you've got any insight.
Okay. In essence, with quantum mechanics, they say there's so many things in quantum mechanics that doesn't make sense or seems to be counterintuitive. Like an electron seems to be here, but it's also there at the same time, and in 2 different places at the same time. And how is that? Superposition, and how is that possible? And a whole number of different things. And I reply with a reply I would say in any period of human history when they were discovering science. At the cutting edge of science, things have never made sense. They've been contradictory. Right? People believe that the planets revolve around or they orbit in perfect circles. Why wouldn't they revolve in perfect circles? Except the planets were observed in different positions than what they calculate as circles. It doesn't make any sense. Oh no, we don't say, let's throw out rationality. Kepler discovered, oh actually it's elliptical orbits. The ellipse like a kind of egg-shaped or whatever, but elliptical orbits. So humans have constantly encountered things in science that doesn't make sense. That's what spurs you on to discover why and what is the true nature. So people say, oh, but the electron could be in 2 places at the same time and it doesn't make any sense. No, all that points to is your model of the electron is wrong. Simple. You think it's a particle, it might not exist as a particle. Who told you it was a particle? Right? It's an assumption. Right? Likewise, they say the argument is matter and antimatter. Right? They both pop out of nothing, because so goes the theory. They have matter and antimatter, and it pops out of nothing, and then they hit each other, they destroy each other, and they pop out of existence. And so doesn't that show that things can come from nothing? So no, all it shows is that things come into human observation in that form, and they go out of human observation in that form. That's all it shows. Why did it make this jump to say, look, we've proven this? It's just like Einstein and all the early scientists who agree, who there was an ijma, almost a global consensus that in steady state theory. Steady state theory says that the whole universe has always existed like it was, eternally. No start point. They like the answer. Until a Belgian priest, who was also a physicist, Georges Lemaitre, showed calculations saying that it could be that the universe came from a single point and expanded into existence. And they hated that. Einstein said, your maths is right, but I hate its conclusion. Einstein. That's what he said. You can check it. And the word Big Bang was actually a derogatory term invented by steady-state theorists to say, what is this? Your theory wasn't like a Big Bang. And that became popular. And later, now it's widely accepted. But the people who rejected it initially, most of them were materialists. And they hated the idea, because this kind of like, well then, we can actually scientifically show the universe had a start point. This kind of is going into theism. Or it's opening the door for theists to come in and say, we told you. And they didn't like that. They hated it. But then Hubble telescope and all these telescopes showed the redshift and light, and it showed the universe would explain it by expanding and a whole number of things. And now it's accepted. It's widely accepted now, the Big Bang theory. So what we've seen is what atheists and not the TV series. What we see is that atheist scientists, my answer to them is, stick to science. Don't stick to speculation. The multiverse theory, they talk about it so much. There's no evidence for it. You know, there's not a single shred of scientific evidence for it. It's just a theory to explain the alternative to believing in a God. That's what it is. They literally brought it in to try to find a non-theistic explanation. But there's no physical evidence. So I'm saying, you know what, the problem is not theologians speculating, it's atheists speculating and mixing it with science in their scientific theses. I say, look, let science tell us what is right and wrong, as in what is true, what is correct, as in what actually exists. Don't involve your theories and say this is science or this is what science believes in. No, the science doesn't believe in that. The experiments show one thing and your speculations are another thing. Keep it separate, please. And only if the evidence shows your speculation, then we will accept it. If not, then you have no say. So don't come to us with quantum mechanics and say, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, you're the only one that doesn't make any sense, because all that quantum mechanics, the current frontier of it shows, is human ignorance. And science has been showing human ignorance for centuries, where things didn't make sense. For centuries. It's not the first time it's happened. But after this postmodernist theory where things are all relative, and they interwove that with science theories, and now think everything's all relative, but depends on your perspective. But no, it doesn't. Your theories are wrong about the central matter of the universe. Time to revise them. Simple. That's our response, and that would be my response to that question.
Okay. Any sisters want to ask a question? You're not a sister. Any sister want to ask a question? Sure, don't be shy. No? You sure?
All right. Does any sisters have heard of any arguments against atheism which they think would be beneficial to share, or you think would be useful for us to see what the answer or response to that would be? Any arguments you've heard that you've been trumped by, or no?
To a topic, yeah.
I'm trying to open it up and say.
So what you're saying, have you heard of any arguments against the existence of God that somebody's posed to you and you'll be like, oh, I think this guy might have a point and whatnot, but obviously you got Islam as your belief, and you're like, do you know what, we need to show this guy that he's wrong, but you don't have like the knowledge to prove it to him. So that's what you're trying to ask. So anyone have ever heard?
All right,
No?
Okay, I'll open it out to the brothers now. Yourself, sir.
Yeah, there's this picture that's been floating around the internet for a long time. It's like got a picture of the Quran or the Bible, whatever. It says proof that God exists. And then it's got like Harry Potter, it said proof that Harry Potter exists. How can we prove that the things in these books are for real?
Well, I think, technically the topic of today is proof of God, and there is another lecture which I won't detract from that lecture coming up, so maybe I will help plug the lectures coming up which will discuss this. But basically, in a book contains words which have meaning. The test of any book is consistency. So is this explanation of reality consistent? Does it contradict itself or not? Is there evidence for what it says? Or does it point you to evidence? So that's how you know any book is right or wrong. So I would say that you apply the same criteria. So obviously Harry Potter, there's no evidence to show they exist. Harry Potter book doesn't claim that Harry Potter is real. But even if there was a mythological book from ancient Greece which said Minotaurs exist and what have you, right? There's no evidence to show they existed, right? It's about evidence. But all the Quran points to doesn't point to mythical creatures, it points to belief in God. And we know that the issue is not whether God exists or not based on the Quran, because we can deduce that without using the Quran. Right? Or the Quran will give you pointers, it will tell you, reflect upon this, think about this, did you make yourself, the Quran actually points you to actually think to yourself about this particular question. The only real question with the Quran is, does it come from the author it says it comes from, which is God? The Quran does give criteria to test, to make these kind of claims, and for you to test it itself rationally, and that's what the Quran is. But this is I will stick to the topic in this particular lecture. Just to
on the topic.
On topic, yeah.
On the topic, yeah.
Okay.
Basically, right, some people I know that are friends of mine, they go to a calamity, they're non-Muslims, and they say, if God was there, why couldn't they, save me from that calamity, or they couldn't save my, family member or something like that. So what would your answer be? We believe in destiny, we believe in Qadr, we believe in everything decreed before man has been made. But you know, how would you respond like that to a non-Muslim who doesn't believe in destiny?
As I said earlier on, they make an assumption that the purpose of their life is to enjoy themselves, or that to experience constant pleasure, and no suffering, no misery, no tests, no challenges, right? And the problem is that that's an assumption, and it's not borne out by reality. We all suffer to some extent, and we all have problems, we all have issues, and the reason for having problems and issues is because these give us a challenge by which we can choose to be better people or worse people. Without these challenges, there wouldn't be any, you know, if everyone had all the food they needed and all a nice massive mansion and everyone was all hunky-dory and their life was just, you know, fun, then there'd be no test to do bad. No one would do anything bad, no one would do anything nasty, no one would be selfish because there's no test, everyone has an abundance, right? Whereas, in order to test whether you would be selfish or not, whether you'll be arrogant or not, whether you would be forbearing or not, you have to have these tests. That's the whole point. These tests are to actually give us the opportunity to have free will. That's the whole point of these tests. Of course, the Islamic concept of Qadr Allah, which is that it's all destined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is really to show that, first and foremost, nothing happens outside God's control and also outside God's intentionality. So everything that happens to us is intended by God, and we should be reassured that we're not in random chaos per se, but everything that happens to us is intended by God for some purpose. There's a purpose for all these things, whether it affects other people or the person yourself. There is a purpose in everything. That's really what the Islamic concept of qadar tells us, and what these atheists would say is they made this assumption, challenged that assumption first and foremost. Said, who said you're here to live in constant pleasure? Where did you get the idea from? You see, it's just an assumption they made, and it's because of liberalism or individualism, which that doctrine that came out of the European Enlightenment made that assumption and taught it to everybody, and now they wonder why everyone's apostated from theism. It's because you gave them the wrong assumption in the first place, and then they saw the contradictions and they just said, well, if this is my purpose and God is not providing that purpose, then God's bad or God doesn't exist. That's their silly conclusion. Whereas the other way around is actually, if God is giving me a life where I have suffering and pleasure, then that theory doesn't exist. And they should have thrown that theory into the trash can, and that would be what you should respond to that.
Okay.
There's one question that a lot of non-Muslims ask. Sometimes they say, how do you know that the God that you believe in is the right God? Like, out of all the religions, how do you prove to someone that? Obviously, everyone believes in one God, but they believe in God in different ways. How would you kind of explain to someone that?
Alright, Sister said, a common argument she hears is, how do you know your God is the right God and not other gods are the right God? I say, there's no, the God of Islam and a different God is the God of Christianity, the God of Judaism, and the God of... We believe God is the God of all human beings, and human beings that believe in an infinite God which is above or transcends the universe, is not in the universe basically, is not finite or limited, is the same God we worship. Right? Even in Islamic scripture, they talked about the Arabs, some Arabs before the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ announced his prophethood, called the Hanif. Right? A Hanif was a person who believed in one God, and he wasn't a pagan Arab. He just didn't happen to be Christian, Muslim, or Jew, for example. Right? There were many Aboriginal tribes which believed in one God, many African tribes that believed in one God, who were not Christian or pagan or what have you. The idea of infinite. Powerful, an infinite God who's not limited and finite, that is the God we worship. Whether you accept the revelation from him or not, the particular revelation, is a different discussion. Right? Likewise, like I said with the scientists who say, we all believe gravity exists, but I think gravity is a particular particle emitted by each matter called a graviton, or I believe is an indentation in space and time. They have different theories about gravity, but they all recognize the existence of gravity. And it's the same thing with God. We all recognize the existence of God for the most part. The problem is, what is the nature of God and what is his will? So what does he actually command us? That's the different part. Right? That's our difference. So it's like two soldiers, to use an example, on a battlefield. One gets an order and the other one doesn't get the order. and on his radio, and one says to the other one, "Oh look, I got this order from this general. We're going over the top." And it's like, "Are you sure?" "I don't think the general said that." Are you really sure?" But they both agree that the general exists. They just disagree as to the order, and that's really the difference between, you could say, religions. But I also argue that the problem with many other religions or perspectives of these religions or subsects of these religions is that they mix the finite and the infinite. And but that criteria doesn't need revelation to tell you it's wrong. That's the point. That's the great thing about it, is you don't need revelation to tell you that's wrong. The human mind is sufficient to tell you that God is not a man, a creature, a statue. He doesn't look like us. He doesn't have these two eyes and a nose like this and all this stuff. He doesn't look like us. He's not like us at all. He's not human. Right? You don't need revelation to say that. These things are expected. The only issue is, after that, is whether obviously revelation is true. Now, we believe as Muslims that people who haven't received revelation or haven't heard of revelation are not accounted for rejecting revelation, because they don't have it to reject it. The real discussion is sincerity, right? So if someone is really sincere. But what everyone will be judged on is whether they use their minds to at least come to the truth they can know, which is God exists and he's not limited and finite in any way, shape or form. And you see that common thread throughout all different human civilizations at some point. Not even the ancient Greeks, many of the Greek philosophers believed in what they call the first cause. They didn't have any other word for it, and they didn't believe in the pagan gods, the pagan Greek gods, but they had this belief of the first cause, the first causer. So that's the God we worship, the infinite, unlimited God, the one God who's not divisible and doesn't have partners. That's the one God and we're not the only ones who say that. So that would be my answer, would be, we all believe God exists. The only difference of opinion is what fear is, that do we pick, and obviously we'd argue we have some certainties too, but what idea of God, as in like what does he say? That's the real debate amongst the people of different religions, but same in science as well, to the things that they encounter. You feel free to clap if you want, you don't have to.
Before you go, this is a long shot. Anyone coming in not believing in a God and believes in a God? No? No? No shahadas today?
No, it'll only be half a shahada.
Yeah, well actually, for half a shahada, then we'll cover it with the rest of our talks.
Just say La ilaha illallah and then stop there to the next lecture.
I think we'll, yeah, inshallah. Yeah, we've got quite a lot of talks coming up next